Welcome to the show, IB Nation Sports Talk. He's Vince. I'm Sean. Here we are.
Just like linemen, no fuss, no muss.
That's right. This is the show that wasn't going to happen that is happening right now, as it turns out. And
Yes.
there's some chatter going on in the chat right now. Brandon says, I was told the commitment was at 4:30 Eastern, which is why I was wondering why the show was at 5:36. I prefer this, though. LOL, needed a break from earlier. So here's what happened. The Anthony Knapp commitment, as many of you probably know, was slated for 5:30 p.m. Eastern time. And so Brian and we talked this morning. I was driving back from Notre Dame from talking to Al Golden and a couple of linebackers over there. And Brian said, look, you've got no show tonight because this commitment's going to be at 5:30. We're going to do the Deanna Gump show, the fundraiser show earlier in the afternoon. And then we're going to do this live commitment show at 5:30. And then sometime after 4:30, I got a call from Brian saying, "Hey, you want to do a show?" And I'm like, "What are you talking about?" They obviously moved up the commitment. He committed an hour early, so it canceled everything. So the schedule is just all over the place right now.
Whopper jawed.
Yes, but we appreciate you being here. And this is a mailbag show. And I know they did a super chat mailbag show earlier. And I'll tell you what, like all the money that they raised from the super chat show earlier today is going to go to the Notre Dame softball, Deanna Gump, to their cancer benefit. So if you guys just want to keep throwing super chats in here and the money goes there, that's where the money will go. We'll just tell Brian that, hey, we got super chats. I've noticed there's a couple that have come in already. So
we'll make sure they get over.
Super chats going. We'll just that's where the money will go today. It's all, we all work for the same place. So
right.
Whatever you want to do.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. It's a great cause, obviously, and so if anybody wants to throw those our way, we'll make sure that they get donated over to the softball team and their fight against cancer. And what a great cause! I hope everybody was able to catch the interview with Deanna Gump. It was a great interview. I saw little bits and pieces of it this afternoon, and because I also didn't go to work today because I have an under the weather wife, and so I got to play Mr. Mom, get the kids off to school, receive them afterwards, etc. So got to sneak a little bit of time in with the show, and so a lot of generous people out there, and we love it. That's one of the things we love about being part of the Irish Breakdown family, and I'm glad that Brian got on board with Coach Gump and the softball program, and it's a great cause. Great cause.
Absolutely. I concur with that. And we're not forcing you to throw in super chats by any means if you don't want to. Troy's asking if it was a time zone issue earlier tonight. I have no idea. What was going on. What about you, Smug Vince?
Ouch. I mean, okay. But I got the call from you and you're like, hey, we're going to do a show. All right. Sounds good. I'm here. Yep. And my son just means he'll be stuck at the gym for an extra hour and a half. So, okay, that's fine. Let's go for it.
All right. Well, we've got a few questions queued up. So you want to take a few?
Yeah, let's do it. Let's jump right into this thing.
All right. Let's start. We'll get out some of these super chats. Yeah. Thanks to Anthony resubmitting his earlier donation to the Cancer Fund Drive. Hope this one goes through. Bingo. Boingo.
Got it.
Thank you very much, Anthony. We do appreciate that. He's got a question in there, and we'll get to that here in a little bit. The other super chat is from RJG. I don't know. Irving. Big one. Help families defeat cancer. Missed earlier show. Hope this helps. Absolutely. We appreciate it. And I'm sure Notre Dame softball and Deanna Gump will as well. So thanks for doing that. We appreciate it.
Awesome.
All right. Have you seen a question that you want to start with? I'm kind of scrolling through here.
Yeah, I'm still kind of starring stuff as they come in. There's a girls basketball question that just came. Well, not a question, more of a comment that I'm sure that you could probably jump on as well if we wanted to go down that road.
Yep.
Let's see. Oh, here's a good one too.
Yeah, I'll just go ahead and start with that.
Matt. Yeah, why not?
And I didn't realize how early the McDonald's All-American game started last night, but it was going on while we were doing the show last
Yeah.
night. I
I
would
thought
have
it was
reported
later
it.
for some reason.
Yeah, I know. I did too.
Well,
Yeah. But Hannah Hidalgo, the Notre Dame commit, 5-star point guard from New Jersey, Gatorade, New Jersey State Player of the Year, was the McDonald's All-American game MVP last
yeah, she
night.
put on a show.
She did, like 8 steals. She averaged over 7 steals per game this year in a high school, and she had 8 steals, I think it was, in the McDonald's game last night. And Matt says he watched her playing the McDonald's game, and all I can say is, wow, we don't have anyone like her that can play the point, shoot the three, and play lockdown defense like her. And right now, with the and I'm not saying like I know there's no like inside information here, but we know that Olivia Miles is having surgery, and
Yeah.
I know that they anticipate a relatively quick return time, but you just never know. And
Right.
so I think that at the very least, Hannah Hidalgo is a very good insurance policy next year. But even with a healthy Olivia Miles, Hannah Hidalgo is going to play next year to some extent, and that only bodes well. That team is going to be so loaded next year. It's going to be really fun to watch.
I mean, I feel like it's almost plug and play. Obviously Mabry is leaving, but I feel like Hidalgo can kind of just step right into that role, and it's even I don't want to say a more advanced role because she is going to be a true freshman, obviously, but Mabry was kind of that emotional soul of the team, whatever, and she could hit threes from just a physicality standpoint, from a skill standpoint. Obviously, you've got the threes, but then you have even more that you would get in that replacement. So it's like it almost just feels like okay, well, Mabry's gone. Thank you, amazing, great, plug and play. Right. That's what it feels like to me.
Because you could have Miles and Hidalgo out there at the same time. Yeah. Like she could come out if Citron needed to come out and get a break. Like she's because of the things that she can do and the kind of defense she can play. And like they were already a good defensive team this year. And again, you add her to the mix next year, and it's just going to be.
I'm excited, man. I'm excited for the women's program, what they're going to be able to do, and I'm just going to try to shoehorn myself in there and do a little color with you next year.
There you go.
It's going to be fun.
Let's do it.
I miss not doing basketball games with you. I'll say it. I'll put it out there.
I know. Well, we didn't do we didn't do any games together.
I know.
This year, after how many years was it? 5 or so? 4 or 5.
Stinks.
We were doing football and basketball and everything else. We slid a little baseball. You did a couple baseball games with me.
I've done it in the past. Yeah, we did like regionals, and then like for high school, we did that from when we were following Mishawaka, and obviously we did a bunch of Notre Dame games together, but nothing in this year, like this school year, which is just weird. It's just weird. Now we can continue on with the women's basketball. We got all kinds of questions.
I didn't see that. Josh wants to know, though, how much money could Notre Dame charge to watch Ben Morrison and Tobias Merriweather go at it at practice?
There was a clip that I saw on Twitter, and it must have been something that Notre Dame put out because we haven't had access to practice for the past couple of days. But there was it was almost like a back shoulder, but it was an underthrown ball, and I don't know who threw the ball, but Merriweather kind of came back, caught it low, scored a touchdown, and it was over or against Ben Morrison. So, I mean, I bet those two are going to duke it out all spring and probably into the fall as well. That's going to be fun.
There have been some really good receiver cornerback matchups that we've been able to watch, like in fall camp and in spring practice over the last few years. Those are always fun, and those two guys going at it, I think that they could charge a lot of money. That would be really fun. To go out and do something like that.
And we're lucky we get to watch it, for free or get paid to do it. And it's going to be so we got the full practice coming up on Saturday, so we get to be there for the entire time. The weather's going to be awful. It was supposed to be in the stadium, so I was really looking forward to like a full like scrimmage type. But now that we got the indoor field, there's probably just going to do the same thing, and we'll be able to watch it, and everything just won't be in the stadium. But Obviously praying it's indoors because I'm not ready to brave the elements that are going to come on Saturday.
Right.
But I'm excited to see, because they always scrimmage for a little while when we're there. And I want to see some of these 11 on 11, putting the ball in the air, 1v1. Let's have some fun with this thing. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, I mean, I would actually, if it ends up, if the weather turns out what it's supposed to do on Saturday and they practice inside instead of in the stadium, I wouldn't be all that upset with that if we get to sit up in the balcony and watch.
Just sit there with a desk.
The view up there is actually good. Yeah, and you've got something, sit and write, and exactly. You've got like a desktop to write your notes and all that kind of stuff on. So wouldn't be the worst thing in the world from my
You're not
point
wrong.
of view anyway.
You're not wrong.
Quinn, thank you for the super chat. Quinn, he said he missed the show earlier. Vince, can you give background on how Estime's been practicing that you have seen? Looks like he moved to Lean City. Has that compromised or enhanced his ability?
Well, I've always thought that Estime had really good feet, and it was one of the things that stood out because of his size, right? And we didn't get a very good look, to be honest with you, at the running backs, because they were just doing some individual drills and they were kind of on the other side of the field last Saturday when we were there. But it's one of the things that I want to watch going into this coming Saturday when we're there
the
for
real
the entire
practice.
Yeah.
One real practice.
Because they didn't have, they had uppers on, but while we were there was no hitting at all. They were just taking handoffs. They were working on some jet type stuff, pitch relationships, some mesh. So there wasn't really a whole lot to see. I'm okay with it. I mean, if he slims down just a little bit, because you're not going to take away from his speed, his agility, or his power.
I agree. Like, I wasn't there this last practice. I was there the first one. So you were there, you were there when I wasn't. I was there when you weren't. And really, we didn't see anything more at that one than you did, and what I've seen of Estime has been some of the videos that they've released. And you're right about his footwork. Like, because I was thinking about Jerome Bettis. There was something on TV the other day, and Jerome, like, the reason Jerome Bettis, for such a big guy, was able to do what he did because he had incredible feet. He had a tap dancer's feet. And while Estime isn't as big as Jerome, he still has really good feet. That is the thing with him. And so I just think that lean down stuff is just going to make him just a little bit quicker, just and a little bit shiftier than he already was for a big guy.
And it's an easy comparison. It's an easy comparison for, to go from Jerome Bettis and Audric Estime, obviously, because they're bigger backs, that kind of a thing. The difference is Audric Estime is a friggin' Adonis, right? Like,
well, yeah, Jerome
Bettis was never
nothing against
cut.
Jerome, but exactly.
He was never cut like that. Even when he was in the pros, he was just a big dude who had good feet and all of that, but he was never like ripped like Estime. It's a completely different build. But the big back thing is absolutely accurate. And I mean, look, I'll say it. I would have loved to see Audric Estime in number 6. I think that would have been a lot of fun to see. But I'll take 7. I mean, that's close enough.
7's fine.
That's close enough. Right. It's a slimming number, right? So, but no, I mean, he's not going to lose any of his pop or his hammer ability. No way.
Yeah. A couple Dara Mabry questions. I'll combine them. Anthony, did Mabry play too many games for a medical year in 23-24? And David Jones, what about the COVID year for Mabry? This was her COVID year. This was her 5th year. She played 2 years at Virginia Tech.
Yeah.
Played the last 2 years. This was her COVID year this year. So that is out.
She was done.
And the medical thing, yes, she absolutely played too many games to qualify for any kind of medical exemption. She basically played about half the season, maybe even a little bit more than half the season.
Because she got injured in January, I believe. So yeah.
Actually, let me look here real quick, and I'll tell you exactly. I mean, I know she has no more eligibility left, but I'll tell you exactly how many games she played here in just a second. It was 18 games. Yeah, so she played more than half. They played 33 total.
Okay.
So yeah, she has no more. I think that she probably, obviously, recovery is the first thing. She hasn't even had the surgery yet on her knee.
I didn't realize that.
Yeah, because she had, and I'm not allowed to get into all the details and all that, but she had some other stuff that kind of went along with it. But Not just the ligament tear is what I'm saying.
Gotcha.
There was like a fracture and stuff like that. So they
Oof.
think they had to wait like a certain amount of time before they could do the surgery and that kind of stuff.
Oof.
So
That's
yeah,
rough.
but
And she may be ready to
unfortunately,
go too. I mean, there's always
yeah.
that too. Ready to kind of start the next chapter, whatever that happens to be.
Right. And that's what I was going to say. I mean, I would imagine that if she wants to, she can probably go overseas and play. I know she, wants to get into broadcasting and that
Okay.
kind of thing. So we'll see maybe where that goes. So I can see that happening as well.
Take my
That's
spot
right.
next to you.
That's right. Get a real analyst in here.
Ouch.
Let me see. Luke wants to know any must-dos the Friday or before the blue gold game.
That's a really good question, Sean, because I know there's a bunch of stuff going on the Fridays before regular home games, but I don't know if they kind of do that similarly for the blue gold game, because I just haven't been to one in so long because I'm always doing baseball. I don't know that it's really the same deal.
Yeah, the only thing that I can think of is like they do the shirt announcement? Isn't that the day before the blue gold game? That's kind of the only. Yeah. I mean, otherwise, just doodle around and see campus when it's not crazy full of people. That'd probably be the biggest thing. Go to the bookstore when it's not jam-packed like it is on a game day.
And they've been renovating that thing too. So I actually haven't been in it since they renovated it. But they were moving stuff around and doing all kinds of stuff indoor there. So yeah, that's a good call, Sean. I would say you're not going to run into the crowds that you normally have on a home weekend. So, kind of take in campus and all of that. And hopefully, fingers crossed, it's going to be towards the end of April that the weather's going to cooperate and you can actually get outside and take in a lot of the campus stuff. Because, I mean, there's an absolute possibility it's snowing. I mean, it's going to be beautiful tomorrow and it was snowing today. Like that's welcome to Northern Indiana.
Yes, exactly. And you just never know what you're going to get weather-wise.
Right. Seriously.
I mean, just look at today. I don't know. Like, I know you were home, but I don't know if you went outside.
I did. It was like a whiteout.
It was kind of cloudy this morning and relatively warm. And then the next thing you know, snow is coming down. Nothing that was sticking. But then not long after that, the snow was gone and the sun still is shining bright right now. So,
it was
welcome to Northern Indiana.
Yeah, I went out to get lunch for my wife, and it was a whiteout. Like you could barely see as you were driving. It was snowing so hard. And tomorrow it's going to be like 50 something. So it's like you just can't predict what it's going to. We're not going to go far for spring break, but one of the days we're going to be in Indianapolis. It's supposed to be 75 degrees. That's like 4 days from now, 5 days from now. Like, what is happening? You just can't. It's unbelievable.
Yep. Timeout Tom wants to know what's the process for a senior returning for a fifth year? Is it a coaches or players and or a combination of both decision?
That's a great question because there's actually a third part of this that most people don't know about or don't follow. Yes. Okay. So it starts off with the coach, right? You have to be asked back. Number one. Number two, obviously the player has to want to come back. I mean, there has been times where they've wanted a player to, they've wanted him to come back and the player's like, no, I'm ready for the next step. Right. So that's part of it. Then after the player and the coaches decide they want him to come back, they have to get accepted into graduate school. Like there is an academic piece to the whole thing as well. And now I don't know that I've ever heard, I bet you Brian could come up with somebody. I've never heard of a kid not getting accepted into grad school that the program wanted to bring back for a fifth or sixth year, right?
Right. Like if he was here through his, and got his degree at Notre Dame, there's no reason you would think of that he wouldn't be admitted to grad school.
Yeah. So, but they have to be admitted. I mean, that's a big part of it as well. And that's why a lot of times you don't hear the announcement by these guys until that decision has been made. So it can be delayed a little bit. So it's actually a 3-part process to come back for a fifth year.
Yeah. Very good answer, Vince. I don't have anything to add to that. Anthony with another super chat. He says, this one is to honor your show.
That one's for us.
Thank you very much, Anthony. We appreciate it.
Supersize it tonight.
Romlak says, Sean, you seem very good at not letting your superiority make your coworkers feel inferior. Are there books or videos you could recommend? There's this Mac Davis song that I listen to. It's called "Oh Lord, It's Hard to Be Humble." Other than that, I don't know. Like the Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance. I just whatever. Romlak Derek spinning his jokes as always.
Oh, it's good stuff, though. That's good stuff.
Revolver, do you guys think Rudolph wants a smaller, quicker offensive line, or is this a one-year deal?
I feel like we're going to know that more after a few months. Like, let's see who, like, obviously there's guys on the board right now that they're recruiting, and they're not going to stop recruiting those guys, right, if they have a good relationship with them. But let's see what happens as we see who Joe Rudolph starts to go after, right? I think it's too early to kind of put a finger on what he wants to shape the O-line to be, because he's dealing with guys that aren't his. And so he's going to work with those guys and he's going to make those guys good. But let's see kind of where he spreads his recruiting blanket. I think that'll give us a better idea of kind of the O-line and how he wants to shape it. I think it's too early to tell.
Yeah, and like Anthony Knapp, I know he's 265 pounds. I'm going to assume he's got some room to fill out on that frame. And, I know they're talking about him as a guard, which, I mean, that would be, you'd still want at least another 30 pounds on him if he's playing an interior line. But that will be, I mean, time is going to tell, I think, on that. And, and if Rudolph is, if that does become the case, I don't think that that's probably just Rudolph's decision either. Like that's something that's going to have to come from Marcus Freeman. Like we want to do more of this, but
and Jared Parker. You know what I mean? Like what? What's the goal offensively? I mean,
right.
We'll just have to wait and see, because we all know what Harry Hiestand did. He would just recruit tackles and then move them to where they needed to go. That was not really the case with the previous offensive line coach. He was more position specific when he was recruiting guys, and frankly, didn't recruit enough tackles, I don't think, over his tenure. So it just all depends, and I think it's going to take some time before we really know what he values, in offensive line recruits.
Yeah. Irish Chi-Town, what are your picks for the men's and women's Final Four? Throwing it on you. Man. Do you have any picks, Vince?
No, I stopped paying attention because I can no longer get points in my bracket.
I mean, I don't know who can get points on the men's side. I think everyone's bracket is maxed out at this point.
Yes. Oh, 100%. Let's see. We have a bracket challenge at work, and the loser's already paying. Like the Final Four hasn't even taken place.
And everybody knows the outcome.
Yes, the loser is buying everybody lunch, and that is Friday. Like it is already taking place because everybody's bracket was just garbage, and it was basically whose is the most garbage. So yeah. Let's see here. So let's go women's first, right? Because you got some higher seeds there. So you got Iowa versus South Carolina. Yep. And then you've got LSU versus Virginia Tech.
I mean, I think it's probably going to be an all SEC championship game. I think it's going to be South Carolina versus LSU. I mean, the semifinal between South Carolina and Iowa, I'm really going to be interested to see what kind of viewership that does, because you've got a team not named UConn that is doing UConn type things in terms of their dominance right now. That is just the complete team, like the size. We were obviously out there in Greenville and we got to see them. That's just the size that South Carolina team has. But they're going to be going up against Caitlin Clark, who is the star really of the women's game right now from Iowa. Mm-hmm. Like that's the matchup I think everyone wants to see. I think it's going to be still Caitlin. I'll be interested to see how far Caitlin Clark can carry them. Like, can she keep it a game going into the fourth quarter? Because you're essentially talking about a great individual player who's a point guard as well, who gets her team involved, but you're going up just against a machine, it seems like. But I'm going to say I'm going to say it's going to be South Carolina versus LSU. By the way, on the subject of Caitlin Clark, have you seen this video that's going around um, on Twitter right now from the Iowa Louisville game the other day? By any chance?
I mean, I saw like nothing that like stood out to me. So
Okay, so it's
probably
I'm not talking about the one where the Texas player and like Haley Van Lith from Louisville.
Oh, they got
remember
like
the handshake
yeah.
line.
Yep.
Well, in the Iowa Louisville game the other day, it's the fourth quarter, and there's like a little more than 3 minutes left. Louisville's getting ready to inbound. Iowa's up by 15 points. It's like 86-71, I think. And the camera zooms in a little bit, and they're showing Caitlin Clark, and Haley Van Lith is standing there, and the lip reading appears that Caitlin Clark said, "You're losing by 15. Shut up."
I love that. Because I do know enough to know that Van Lith likes to run her mouth.
Yes.
I do know that much.
Never
and
stops.
I think that's hilarious. The old scoreboard point. You know what I mean? It's
That's
like
exactly right.
It's time to shut it down.
I loved it. I loved every minute of it. It was hilarious. And it looked like Van Lith may have just shut up after that. You couldn't see her face, but she just kind of stood there. It didn't look like she was saying much. So
I mean, your hatred for Louisville goes all the way back to when you were calling baseball games. So
that's right.
That's a deep-seated hatred.
That's right. That's right. So I'm gonna say all SEC on the women's side.
Yeah. I think South Carolina is going to take it, by the way.
Yeah. I do too. Okay. Men's, I'm just leaning toward UConn. They just feel like they're the team to beat right now. Yeah.
I kind of like what Jim Larinaga is doing. I mean, it feels like they're on a bit of a run. I mean, you've got a 9 versus a 5 and a 5 versus a 4. I mean, it's as much of a coin toss at this point, than anything else. I'll take Miami just to be different in that one. What say you on Florida Atlantic? Is their Cinderella shoe going to stay on, or is San Diego State going to take it?
That one's tough to figure. And I mean, San Diego State with that defense, their defense has been working overtime for them. So my gut says UConn versus San Diego State in the national championship. But it would be kind of fun if it's Florida Atlantic and Miami. I think Jesse and I were talking about the other day, like you get an all Miami area national championship game that nobody would have seen coming.
And that I don't know how many people are going to watch any of these, but I mean, it's the men's basketball. So I mean, some people are going to watch, but
there are no All-Americans in the Final Four for I think one of the first times ever, they said. Yeah.
Wow. I actually, my gut was telling me the complete opposite of you. I was going to go Miami and Florida Atlantic, and then I'm going to take Miami to win it all. I don't know. I don't know much because I scored 0 points in the round of 8, and then obviously moving forward. So, I don't know anything, but that's my gut.
I don't see any reason to go against that. I mean, that's, it's your gut. We're all just going, I mean, no one would have predicted this Final Four to begin with. So trying to predict who's going to win in this Final Four, interesting. Anthony Campbell said, or Michael Campbell rather said, Anthony Knapp just said he was 212 pounds. First he lied, first saying he was 220 something to play, but he is 268, puts on weight pretty fast, lifting and eating. Okay.
Well, and you get it. Look, high school is tough sometimes, especially if you don't have like personal trainers and all of those things. Like for some guys, it's going to be tough to build weight and muscle and all of that. Once you get him into a program, like they're not bringing him in to start right away. I mean, get him into the system, get him into the strength program, get him into the nutrition program, all of that. Let's see what he can put on his build, and you kind of go from there. You know what I mean? And like you said, Brian thinks he's going to be an interior guy anyway. And so get up to 295, 300, you're going to be in pretty good shape.
Well, I remember like Golick Jr. was like not, I think it took him, like he had to work to put weight on and keep it on himself. Like there are guys who are like that, and there are plenty of guys like that in the NFL. Like look at Joe Thomas, who was just elected to the Hall of Fame, the former Cleveland Brown. He's one of those guys who really had to work to keep it on. And as soon as he quit playing and didn't have to consume all that food like that, I think he probably dropped 50 or 60 pounds in a couple months, So
Yeah.
I think there are just guys like that. And like you said, once you get into the nutrition and the strength and all that kind of stuff, it'll come. I would think. I would think that it'll come fairly easily.
Yeah.
Once you get, he's gonna have to work at it with the calories. Like we all wish we could have that problem, but to keep packing on
I know,
the
seriously.
calories. But yeah,
never been a problem for me.
Yeah. Salty wants to know how many people you're buying lunch for, Vince.
Ouch. There are 6 of us in the pool. I came in 4th. So comfortably in the middle. And the only thing on the line was the loser had to buy lunch. So as long as I didn't come in last, we were good. So comfortably in the middle. I'm getting some good food on Friday.
Yeah. Anthony wants to know who we see as the starting linebackers.
I don't see a scenario where JD Bertrand is not starting. I just don't.
No chance.
I just, you can say what you want to.
I know that's going to disappoint some people.
I know it is too. I get that. I just don't see a scenario where that's the case.
Only thing that keeps JD Bertrand off the field is injury.
Correct. Yep, no doubt about it. Now, is Maris going to reprise his role at linebacker? I think that could be more of a shared situation. That's where Snead has been, right? He's been practicing over there. Does that sound right? Because these guys have moved around so much, and I haven't watched the defense yet.
And we got to talk to a couple of the linebackers today, like Nolan Ziegler and Prince Colley, and Marist was actually in there. But that's again something that I asked Nolan Ziegler about, was moving around, playing all the different linebacker positions. And it sounds like they're keeping them a little bit more right now to you're an inside guy or you're a rover. And
gotcha.
So like Ziegler, Bowen, and who was the other one? There's one other guy that I can't think of off the top of my head, another young guy, but they're mostly playing like Mike and Will right now.
Okay.
Is what he was saying.
Interesting. So, okay.
Yeah.
You can kind of just put everybody in a bag and shake it up and kind of go with it as long as you assume that JD is going to start. Like, that's the only thing in my mind that is a definite right now. And I want to see a little bit of live scrimmage. I want to see these guys flying around the field. I mean, is Jordan Botelho going to be a Viper? Is he going to be like, where does he fall into this whole thing? I mean, there's going to be a lot of questions that need to be answered, but I also think if they do it right, they're going to be able to shuttle some guys in and out, and you're going to see a lot of different bodies back.
Yeah, there. I think you could still get like down in distance and situational type guys out there, like pass coverage. Like Ziegler, just as an example, because of he has some defensive back in his background. Like he's a guy who maybe can get out there and I was going to say maybe he could be like the next Bo Bauer type guy in that dime package to start off, like that kind of thing. Like I could, just based on what we've seen so far, the guy's got some quick twitch. He's got some size as well. So I want to see him live. We haven't got to see him live. All we got to see was some drills the other day. So that's definitely what I want to see. Tomorrow, we are going to have some Al Golden comments about some of this stuff.
Sir.
Some audio that will play on the show. So we'll get into a little bit more detail about that. There were a couple of interesting things like that he had to say about that. So
you're such a tease.
I know. I do what I can. Garland, with the way the practice clips have been showing wide receivers 0 and 5, giving DBs 20 included fits, do you see us having 2 wide receivers over 800 yards and 5 touchdowns?
Is it possible? Sure. I mean, absolutely it's possible. And depending on how many red zone opportunities, both, Tobias Merriweather and Deion Colsey, 0 and 5, are big dudes, big targets in the red zone. And all of those, not all, a lot of the targets that went to Michael Mayer last year in the red zone.
Contradicting yourself.
I know, right? all the a bunch of the targets that went to Michael Mayer in the red zone, I think are going to go more on the outside. I think you're going to see, Thomas, Colsey, Merriweather, just those big bodied receivers. They're going to get more targets in the red zone. So from a touchdown perspective, yeah, I could see that being the case because I think they're going to throw the ball a bunch. They're going to use their size to their advantage. The 800 yards part might be a little bit more difficult just because, I think they're going to spread the ball around a little bit more because you're going to have some guys step up and you're going to have to spread the ball around. So could it happen? Sure. If I was a betting man, I would say no.
I think at least one receiver is going to. And remember, Michael Mayer is the only guy who had over 800 yards this year or, last year. But I think with Hartman, I think at least one of the receivers, I would say one will have over 800. But I do think that next guy will be in that at least 600 to 700 yard range, somewhere around there.
Mm-hmm.
I do think so because I just think, again, the tight end is not going to disappear from the offense, but it's not going to be tight end heavy like it's been the last 3 years. It's going to look a lot different.
Look, the offensive coordinator is the tight end coach, right? He's not going to forget about the tight ends. There's going to be a tight end on the field a lot. They're not going to go 5 wide, right? I mean, they're just not. One tight end at least will be on the field at all times. I still think the tight end will be a productive position at Notre Dame. I don't think they're going to forget about him. I just don't think it's going to be, you can add up all the receptions and all the yards and all the touchdowns of all the tight ends. It's not going to equal what Michael Mayer did. Michael Mayer is arguably the best tight end ever to step foot on Notre Dame's field, right? I mean, arguably. Mm-hmm. And so you don't have that on the roster. You got some really good guys, some really good tight ends, but they're not Michael Mayer. So give them a chance, but you're going to see more action to the wide receivers for sure.
No, I think so as well. And it just kind of made me, it sparked a thought in me here. And I'm looking for something to see if I back up my confirmation, and my internet's running a little bit slower than I would like. So I'm kind of stalling here a little bit, but where did it go?
Well, I do think there's going to be a bunch of receivers with yards. So
yeah, like I was thinking about USC with Caleb Williams last year. Jordan Addison, 875 yards. Taj Washington, 676. Mario Williams, 596. And then, so like I could easily see that being the case. And like Chi-Town was saying, it would be fun to see, where did it go? 5 different guys over 500 yards, maybe not 5, but
that's a lot.
You could see 3 to 4 in that range.
Sure. Yeah. And look, you got a guy that's used to throwing for a bunch of yards, and they're going to stretch the field, and you're going to get, you're going to get yards on big plays, and you're going to get yards on short passes that turn into big plays, and you're going to get all that, I mean, look, there's a chance that Chris Tyree could have 500 yards receiving. I mean, that's a possibility. Yeah. I think he's going to get a lot of targets out of the backfield, or in the slot.
Michael, I mean, this is a good point for Michael. Not going to be going 3 and out as much because you're going to have a quarterback who can read defenses and convert third downs. I completely agree.
Yeah, you're going to have more opportunities. I completely agree with that, Michael. I think you're going to get more offensive opportunities than they did last year from start to finish. Whoever the quarterback was, you're just going to be on the field more. And again, this is probably a bigger topic for a later time, but with the offense being on the field more than they have in the past, it's going to just be a factor that the defense is going to be better because they're going to be more rested, and games aren't going to come down to the defense preventing the big play. Remember, that was always the issue last year, was like, okay, the defense is playing well, but man, that one drive, towards the end of the game, they just gave up, 80 yards on 10 plays or, whatever it was like that back-breaking drive. Well, if they're not on the field as much, I think the chances of that back-breaking drive happening are slim to none.
I concur. On the subject of wide receivers, Jeff wants to know which true freshman wide receiver will play the most in 23, Flores, Greathouse, or James?
I think, okay, again, I have to preface this with I was there for 25 minutes on last Saturday, right? And so my answer could change, but I will say I think Rico Flores is the most polished receiver at the moment from a route running standpoint, from a hand standpoint. I know that's going to upset some people that I didn't say Great House, the great one. But I think Flores is the most game ready right now. And the difference between this year's incoming freshman and last year's solo incoming freshman in Tobias Merriweather is they don't need those guys. I don't think that they're going to need these guys to step up and play right away because Colsey, Thomas, Styles, Merriweather, I think those guys are going to be
all
head
a
and
year more
shoulders
advanced,
better than they were last year.
Yeah.
And they're going to take the bulk of the reps. And the reality is you're not going to see more than about 5 wide receivers in the rotation, right? And you could even say Chris Tyree is going to be the 5th one. So you may not even need any of these freshmen. But if I had to pick one, I'd say Rico Flores.
That's the guy I'd go with as well. And to be honest, I don't want to say he's completely surprised me, but just looking at, like you're talking about, both the hands as well as the route running, as well as the explosiveness and just the
thick. He's
college-made body that he has. Yeah, like that guy's got real muscle on his body already.
Yeah.
And he's supposed to be a senior in high school right now. He's the one who's definitely stood. I mean, and they've all three done some good things. Again, like if you're looking at the highlight videos and all that different kind of stuff, they've done some nice things. Braylon James, they put one out on him today, making a pretty nice catch, but Flores would be my pick as well, just based on what we've seen right now. And again, that's 2 partial practices. So don't hold our feet to the fire.
Yeah. Well, because the first team that they ran out, if I remember correctly, was Colsey, Merriweather, and Thomas. Thomas was in the slot. Colsey and Merriweather were on the outside. And then you had Styles in with the second team. I don't remember who else was in with the second team. I'll have to obviously pay more attention to that this coming Saturday. But, they're not going to force feed these freshmen. They're going to let these guys come along naturally. But now they have the ability to do that. That wasn't the case last year, man. They had to get Tobias Merriweather kind of force-fed. Now, they didn't get him on the field quite as quickly as I think all of us would have liked. And, of course, then he got the concussion, and so he had some injury issues, at the end of the season. But it's just a completely different wide receiver room now than it was this time last year.
Yep, I concur. Brandon, who are going to be the women's basketball team's bigs for next year? Are they recruiting any post-type players currently or any rising stars on the team? Well, Kylie Watson will be back. Nat Marshall, I would expect, will be back. Lauren Ebo, this was her 5th and final year, so she'll be gone. It sounds like the transfer portal is probably there are no incoming freshmen who are going to be big. So I believe that they're probably going to go out into the transfer portal, just like they did with Ebo and Watson this year, and with Maya Dodson last year. Go to the portal and try to bring one more probably in next year. Get some experience.
Yeah, because Watson, I thought, did a pretty good job when Ebo was out. Was that 5 games? I thought she did a pretty good job kind of holding her own. I mean, they didn't really, it was kind of her or nothing is what it kind of felt like. But when she was in the game, I thought she did a really good job. And if they can find somebody to back her up on a more consistent basis, then I think they're going to be in pretty good shape from a big standpoint.
She really had some flashes. She had a big game, the 20-point game in the first meeting against Louisville, the one that Olivia Miles won at the buzzer. And she had some other really solid game. Played. It really kind of came together for down the stretch. It was still a little bit more up and down, but she's got 2 seasons of eligibility left because of the COVID, if she decides to use that 5th year. So that's a player who could be here for the next 2 years and really, give them some good production over the next couple of years. So that's what I suspect.
I also like, I don't mind Maddie Westbeld being in there kind of as a big slash wing type person. You know what I mean? Because there's a lot of matchups that they can take advantage of with her. You know, if they're gonna put a big on her, great, stretch them out. If they're gonna put a smaller forward or even a guard on her, great, put her on the post. Like she can play kind of inside and out. So I feel like that's a nice matchup for Notre Dame moving forward as well.
And they took advantage of that in those couple games that were here at Purcell for the tournament because of of Olivia Miles, we saw a lot more of those mismatches kind of
Mhm.
created. That's exactly right. Because of her skill set, she can do that. And I'll be
Yeah.
curious to see kind of where she's going to be a senior next year, which is crazy.
That is nuts. I mean,
I know.
she's played she's played since she was a true freshman, right?
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
and so anybody that's going to be a senior, do they still have the COVID situation? So she could,
She would have a COVID.
okay. So she's
Right.
got 2 years potentially.
Right.
Gotcha.
Just depending on how she
Yeah.
wants to use it, and what her drafts potential becomes next year, and all that kind of stuff for the WNBA.
Right.
Interesting one from Salty. What's the best purchase you've ever made under $10?
Wow.
That's like,
That's 42 years of buying stuff, man. Like,
I know.
I mean, I used to fill my tank of gas for a lot less than $10 back in the day. So that would get me from A to B. That's a really good question. I'm not sure which direction to go with this. Like, for some reason, off the top of my head, because some people were asking some baseball questions, I was thinking like my red line price to go to a Cubs game when I was going to Loyola in Chicago. Like, that was great. Just hop on the old red line, go to Wrigley Field.
I can't think of anything off the top of my head. I was hoping maybe you were going to have something really big, but I might need a week to think about this one. Yeah. If maybe we'll revisit this tomorrow with some time to think on it. Maybe something will come to us over the next day.
It's a very random question, man.
I know.
And but it's a thought-provoking one.
It's an interesting one, but there's actually something that comes to mind, but I don't think I should say it on this show. So
that's probably true. I don't know if my mind went to the same place yours did, but
well, we'll compare notes after the show. Don't forget to hang up without answering coming back to this question. So I was in high school. I was in high school at the time. I'll just leave it at that.
I was going to say I probably should have invested more in the under $10 one, if that is how I feel. if we're thinking along the same lines right now, based on the noise I'm hearing upstairs.
And yes, Anthony wants to know, what is there to do in July? I'll be back up there, back-to-back weekends in July. Here's the thing. Okay, here's the thing that I would say. If you're coming to this area in July, just go to the beach up Lake Michigan. Like, that's what I would do.
Yeah.
For starters. I mean, otherwise, South Bend is South Bend, so I would do that. Like, there are a lot of again, you've got to go into Michigan, but if you're into craft beer, there are a lot of different craft beer places in southern Michigan, that you can hit. So the wife and I do that once the weather gets nice in the summer.
It's funny. I try to think about what I'm doing like in June and July, like during the summer. I'm on campus doing another job, pretty much every day in the summertime. And when we go on vacation, we go up to Lake Michigan. Like, that's where we go for summertime vacation. So, and we go in July. So I'm with you on that one. I think, heading up to the beach is kind of the way to go when you're in the heat of the of the summer,
Yeah. Brian said he went away from the chat, but he kept the video on for 10 minutes. Well, thank you, Brian. Thank you for not, just checking out on us. What? I'm not sure who they're talking about there. So, what to do in July? Chi-Town, how do the Notre Dame baseball and softball teams look this year compared to last year? Well, the baseball team, and we talked about it, they beat Louisville 2 out of 3 last weekend. First time they've ever beaten Louisville in a home series.
Crazy.
So that's a start. The question is this the start of a turnaround? Like, are things going to start clicking for them, or was it just an aberration? So,
right.
Because
they've been very
and I mean,
hot
and softball
cold.
Softball, Deanna Gunther, they're just always consistent. That's
right.
That's what I would say with them. Book them for the tournament.
Because baseball is 13-9 right now, and softball is 19-8-1. So, but Deanna Gunther has never missed the NCAA tournament in her entire time being head coach, except for the COVID year, which we don't count anyway.
Correct.
And so, I mean, you're right. They are the measure of consistency, no doubt about that. The baseball team, I think, is still, they're a work in progress because it's a brand new coach, brand new staff, all of that. A lot of, your stud players left or whatever. And they were very up and down at the beginning. And part of that, I think, is because of the way that they had their preseason schedule kind of set up. They didn't do, the classic tournaments, and they didn't, they didn't really barnstorm like they've done in the past, right? They always used to go to Texas for the Irish Classic. They would, they would go to these various places, and they would have kind of a tournament style, right? Where they wouldn't play these 3-game sets. Well, they played all 3-game sets at the beginning of the season. And that's just kind of a different way to go about it, right?
It is. It's a very different way.
Yeah. So, and then they
I'm
lost
on record,
first...
not a fan. We'll see, we'll see.
Yeah, no, me neither. Out, and they lost their first 2 ACC series, right? They lost 2 out of 3 to Georgia Tech and 2 out of 3 to Wake Forest. Now, granted, both of those were on the road. In their first home series, they took 2 out of 3 from Louisville. So it's like, who is this team? I don't know that we know the answer to that yet.
We don't. But they did move Jack Findlay into the starting rotation last weekend.
Long overdue.
He was pretty dominant. Yeah, I think he's been there the last couple of weekends, and they're starting to click. So maybe that's kind of the thing that can get them going. The offense still has to find its way. That has been very inconsistent so far.
Mm-hmm.
And the last question we've got in there for right now from Josh. Sean, who is your mentor as a play-by-play guy? And have you ever done color or just play-by-play? Really glad you guys told me about Odyssey. Well, thanks for listening on Odyssey. I've tried, some color from time to time, like when I've traded off mostly in baseball. And I think I've done some football as well. I'm just not the analyst guy. I'm play-by-play guy. To me, it's a lot harder to sit in the seat that Vince usually sits in when we're together and do the analysis of the play. So I've done it from time to time, but not a whole lot. As far as the mentor part, I would say that there are, whether you call them true mentors or not, I would say that the 3 guys who had the biggest early influence on me as a play-by-play guy. One is Tom Hedrick, who at the University of Kansas, he was the guy. He taught some of the broadcasting stuff, and specifically, he taught the sports broadcasting stuff. There was there was only one class that was like sports specific, and like he taught that class, and you had to kind of be in the curriculum for a while to get in that class. It was fairly competitive to get in there and all that kind of stuff. But he's been the voice of he was the voice of the Cincinnati Reds, I think, like back in the 60s and part of the 70s. I think he did some Dallas Cowboys for a little bit. He's called some Super Bowls on the radio, some other sports like that. So he was sort of the one who helped shape the nuts and bolts and would critique, like he would send us out, with our recorders. We would have to go to either high school games or whatever games and embarrass ourselves sitting in the stands, doing our play-by-play into the recorders. And then we'd have to bring them back in, and he would critique them. And he was kind of hard on me at first, but I got the Tom Hedrick seal of approval by the time it was all said and done. He actually called me one of the most improved guys that he ever had from start to finish in the program. So I was proud of that at the time. The other who didn't have like direct links, but he would talk to some of our classes from time to time, is Bob Davis, who at that time was the voice of the Kansas Jayhawks. He did football and basketball, and just like very excited style and all that kind of stuff. And so he was like one that I listened to and, kind of helped shape it. And I've talked about Kevin Harlan before, and it's not like Kevin Harlan and I trade Christmas cards or anything, but there was a time well before I came here when I was living and working in a small town in southeastern Colorado doing junior college and high school play-by-play. Kevin he's a Kansas alum himself, and he had come and talked to a couple of our classes, and I got his phone number and address. And, so I sent him a couple of different tapes when I was living in Colorado, and, I'd be sitting there one day and the phone would ring and it's Kevin Harlan, where, like willing to give me a full critique of everything, so.
No way.
So he was very, very, like, one of the nicest guys that you'll ever meet. Like, as great a play-by-play guy as Kevin Harlan is, and you know what I think of Kevin Harlan as a play-by-play guy, but great, like, just and I did it twice, and like the second time, because it was maybe a year later, it was back when things were on cassette. He's like, "Didn't we do this before?" But he was like, he talked, and he's like, basically it was like, stick with it, keep working, it'll work itself out. And here we are almost 30 years later, and it's worked out fairly well. Anyway.
I would agree. Yeah, I would agree. That's awesome. That is really cool. I never knew that story.
Oh, you didn't?
I don't think you've ever told me that. I don't think you've ever I would have remembered Kevin Harlan calling you like that. I didn't realize that was the case.
Yep.
So, and I know it's going to sound corny as hell, but I didn't grow up thinking I was going to get into this business. I can thank Sean for that. And my boredom one day listening to the radio and you having that contest that I wrote in on.
That's right.
And so I can thank you for getting into this business, because, you always hear about people like, oh, I listened to so-and-so and, growing up as a kid and da-da-da-da-da. Well, I listened to people, obviously, because I was a sports fan. Never thought I'd be on this side of the mic. And so my only person that I ever looked up to that I learned from is you. So, I mean,
for good or bad, here we are.
Here we are, man. And when I've done a few play-by-play. First of all, doing play-by-play is 1,000 times harder than doing analysis and color. 1,000 times harder, number one, because you have, and I would say, I take it back. The prep work for being a play-by-play guy is 1,000 times harder than being an analyst.
True.
Because you got to have stats and you've got to have, just so much information about each player, information, just tons of it. And then you got to put it on a piece of paper that makes sense, that you can find that information quickly. And everybody's different with the different call sheets that they have. So it's super hard, super complicated. But when I would do some of those play-by-plays, I was like, I'm stealing Sean's stuff, what he says. And I didn't even realize it, but like I would say phrases that you would say, and like,
well, and that's how I was like when I would, because Kevin Harlan and Bob Davis, again, Davis being the voice of the Kansas Jayhawks, and Fred White, who was and Denny Treese, the voices of the Kansas City Royals, like those were the guys I listened to the most. And so just by nature, by listening to, and they were all really good. And, and especially like Harlan and Davis, the excitability that Harlan has, and Bob Davis is very similar and like, fairly intense. And, I think back then, even I was probably even more intense with some of my calls. And like, I was calling high school games, and this little kid comes up to me one time and he goes, "Are you the guy who does Kansas Jayhawks?" And I'm like, "I wish, kid. I don't even know what you're talking about." He's like, "Well, you sound like him." And I'm like, I never thought that I sounded like Bob Davis. So that was, again, that was like one of the biggest compliments that I could get.
Yeah.
But that's what it comes down to, I think, when you're starting, is just imitating what you hear. And, that's it. You just kind of go from there, I think.
Yep. Either way, it's a great job to have, and it's incredible fun. I will say that. 20 years ago, I did not see my life going in this direction, and I am all the more blessed for it. So it is got really good friends out of the deal, and I got to see some amazing sporting events along the way.
We're going on 19 years this year, which is nuts.
It's crazy.
Talk about that contest. Yeah, that's right. Vince won a contest.
Yeah. I think probably the only one I ever won.
Brian with the super chat for the cancer fundraiser. Thank you very much, Brian. We appreciate that once again. And Nathan Milton with the super chat. Thank you. Nathan says, of all the IB staff, who's the most capable of talking their way out of a fight with an angry mob of OSU fans after Notre Dame beats them next year?
Well,
it ain't me.
I have a pretty good way of diffusing people verbally. It's kind of my job. But I will say that after the last Ohio State Notre Dame game in Ohio, I was ready to start slugging people before the game and after the game. So I'm not going to promise anything. But it's a lot easier when you win. Like you can kind of carry yourself a little bit differently when you win, So if Notre Dame is able to win that game, there's not going to be any fighting. It's going to be great.
Yeah, and if it's an angry mob, like me being in my 50s now, like my mechanism is not, just to talk my way out of it. Like if they started talking, I would say some, sarcastic things back to them, and like then it would escalate, and then I would have to run my old butt out of there. So
exactly. But for this question, I think I agree with Anthony. I'm going to go with Sean Davis. Dude lives in Chicago, man. Like he's ready to he'll be ready to throw down.
Okay.
Yeah, I have a feeling he'd be ready to throw down if need be.
Very true. Father David, good to hear from you. He said, I would have loved to have been a play-by-play guy. Obviously, the Lord has other plans. How do you avoid being a fan when calling a game? I would say that there were times earlier in my career where I let my fandom get too much of me. Like there's some calls that I would like to have back because I let the fan come out too much. And over time, I have definitely learned to corral the fandom and be more, professional in the approach while still conveying the excitement and all that kind of stuff.
Well, and there's also a fine line because most of the stuff that you do, I mean, obviously Mishawaka, the high school here that you did a bunch of stuff for and do a bunch of stuff for, you are the Mishawaka play-by-play guy. So there is a slant towards a team, and there's a slant when you're doing women's basketball and you were doing men's baseball for Notre Dame. I mean, there's a slant towards Notre Dame or towards whatever team, but there's a fine line, like the we's. I'm a huge fan of not saying we because you're the broadcaster. You're not shooting or hitting or pitching or whatever. Like, slow down with the we's. So it is, but it is tough at times. I mean, you want them to win. You want them to be successful because you have to go on the plane with them, an hour after the game's over or whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, it's a very professional line that a lot of people don't have, to be perfectly honest with you. And it's borderline embarrassing to listen to at times.
I agree. Jeff, chances Al Golden has shown the door if the same issues with the linebackers happens this year, along with some of the late collapses, red zone issues they had.
I mean, if it is very obvious that that's the Achilles heel for this Notre Dame team and wherever they want to be, whatever they consider successful, if it's the linebacking core and the defense as a whole, then yeah, I don't think Marcus Freeman is going to sit around and allow another year to take place. So it may not be like an all-out firing, but it may be like hey, it's time to look for a different gig and we'll support you in any way kind of a situation.
Yeah, and I think part of it's going to depend on what the overall team looks like as well. Like, if the offense is really clicking, which we expect that it will be, and it's a championship level offense, but they're giving up, it's not like they were giving up even 25 points a game last year. They still kept the points down.
They were top 20 defense.
Yeah. And I think this is probably a good place to wrap up because of the late nature of finding out we had the show today. It's just going to be mailbag tonight. We're not going to have a rapid fire or anything, but again, we're going to have a lot of Al Golden comments on tomorrow's show. But some of the things that he talked about today, paring some things down that they were doing last spring, like learning from kind of what we were talking about yesterday, learning from last spring, what's really necessary, what's not necessary, and applying that to this spring and what they're working on right now. So, but my point was going to be is if the offense is championship level and the defense is giving up 30 points a game and you're obviously a detriment and you're holding the overall team back, then I think that maybe, you're in that case, he does get whatever hot seat, but I don't know. We'll see. I know that a lot of people would have liked to seen it, seen a change made after last year.
And I get it.
Yeah.
I mean, I get it, but give him a second. Like, give him a chance to, and if he's saying these things in interviews, and we're going to talk a lot more about it tomorrow, but if he's saying things in interviews, then that at least gives me a good idea that things are headed in the right direction.
Yeah, I agree. All right, well, we will leave it at that. We Are Not Marshall says breaking the rapid fire streak is similar to when Ripken finally sat down. I mean, we do still have a show every Friday dedicated to rapid fire. So we're making up for that to some extent, I think.
Absolutely.
But again, because of the commitment
yes.
of Anthony Knapp, that kind of it changed our show schedule around a couple of different times today.
Yep.
We weren't originally going to have a show.
And
then we found out, then we found out about an hour before the show was going to start that we were going to have a show again.
Yeah,
so we're like,
good.
We'll do a mailbag and have fun with it. So
yeah, absolutely. Why not?
All right, so that's going to do it for tonight. Appreciate all the questions. Appreciate the super chats as well, and those will go toward that Notre Dame softball fundraiser that they were doing earlier today. Appreciate everyone for stopping by today. And Derek, do appreciate it.
Even if you're lying, it's okay.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't actually believe that, you mean that, but that's okay. Just the sentiment is good enough. All right, we'll talk to you tomorrow on IB Nation Sports Talk.